Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Radnor Township School Board Curriculum Committee meeting for April 20th, 2021. First item on our agenda is introductions and administrative remarks. Mr. Bechtold.
Thank you, Mrs. Solomon. Tonight we have a very full agenda, but we also have Mrs. Kevgis, the principal of the high school, with us. She's going to provide a very brief status update as to graduation and prom. There's a lot of exciting things happening, and we're thrilled to have Mrs. Kevgis here with us. So, Mrs. Kevgis.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtold. I'm confused. I thought I was here with Doc Molman to make a science presentation, but I can wing it, no problem. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. May and June, as you well know, are extremely busy months at the high school. In less than 2 weeks, we will begin 6 weeks of AP exams, followed by Keystones in the first 2 weeks of June. This time of year, our seniors begin to think about life after Radnor High School and look forward to beginning a new journey, whether that is a college or in a career. Before we let the class of 2021 go, we have a number of events lined up to honor them. Prom, baccalaureate, senior recognition night, our senior carnival, our post-prom event for this year, and of course, graduation. Radnor High School will host this year's senior prom on campus. Our senior class sponsors and our student government have been working closely with administration to get everything together. The prom will take place in the junior lot, where we will have two 80 by 100-foot tents. Under one tent will be an oversized dance floor large enough to allow students to socially distance when they dance. The other tent will have an area for food as well as tables. We will require that seniors take a rapid COVID test for the prom, and that every student, will be breathalyzed that evening as they come into the event. All of these details will be shared with our seniors and our parents shortly. We are so happy to be able to do this for our seniors. It's going to be a wonderful event. We are still looking at finalizing some details for both baccalaureate and senior recognition night. However, seniors have made it very clear to us that they want the events to be in person, and we are going to do everything in our power to make that happen. The tricky piece for both events will be working around construction on campus. We are confident, however, that we will somehow make it work, and we will send those details out to our parents and to our students in the next few weeks once we finalize those items. Oh yeah, and there's graduation. I forgot about graduation. Finally, graduation. Graduation will take place on Wednesday, June 16th in the Villanova Stadium. Our rain date is the very next day, June 17th. Each family will receive 4 tickets for the event, and our graduation team has a walkthrough scheduled this Friday to iron out all of the final details, including mandatory graduation rehearsals. So many different things coming up and so many wonderful things to celebrate. We can't wait to get the party started. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kavakis. That brings us to the second item on the agenda, which is public comment. Ms. Gangle, is there any public comment at this time?
Hi, everyone. Yes, we had one public comment come in for this evening. This is from Gail Morrison, 111 Poplar Avenue in Wayne. To the Board Curriculum Committee, I see the Science Department presentation on the agenda and do hope you will be able to talk about this today and hear from the admin and teaching team who have been working on it. I am very happy and excited about our TSD creating a K-12 science department. I think this is really important work. I see many of my kids' teachers on the vertical team listed. I comment today to highlight concerns I have that the direction being set may be too heavily focused on discovery and project-based learning, and that may falter in our implementation and not support improved outcomes for all students. The Next Gen Science Standards, NGSS, may be a pendulum swing too far in the direction of discovery and project-based learning, but that can be accounted for and corrected if we look out for it. Please share the attached documents with the team and take some time to read them. They are published work by academic experts in science, teaching, and learning. I would like to see Radnor keep this science department and curriculum work informed by the evidence for the effectiveness of direct and implicit instruction for novice learners. As the 2 articles attached point out, students with learning disabilities in particular benefit from direct and explicit instruction as compared to discovery-based learning. In science in particular, many teaching and learning experts do recommend that students get explicit and direct instruction in scientific terms and vocabulary. From the from the Watt al. Article's conclusion, current evidence clearly suggests that explicit instruction is more effective than discovery learning approaches for all students, including students with LD. Thank you for your time and consideration. Scientific literacy is extremely important for all Radnor students. To me, chemistry and physics are life skills. Let's ensure all students are learning to their full potential in our science classes. I have advocated for nearly 10 years for improved science education in Radnor and for more attention and focus on the science department at Radnor High School. So today's news is welcome, and I hope we hear more from the board and curriculum committee and admin as this work progresses. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to the approval of the March 16th minutes. Anybody have any corrections? Committee members? I'm looking at you. Nobody's saying anything. I take that the minutes are good as written. Let's move on then to the board action items. This is agenda item 4.1. Mr. Bechtold?
Yes, thank you. We have a number of action items that we would ask to be moved to the full board for the business meeting. First, we have grants, gift, and donations for library books for our 5 buildings from Radnor Rise. We also have approval of academic affiliation agreements with a number of universities for student teachers and junior block students. We also have 2 contracts, one for a branding company and one for the Radnor High School 2021 graduation ceremony, which will take place at Villanova University. We have a revision to this year's instructional calendar. We had 4 built-in snow days and we used 3 of them. So the last days have been amended both for students and for teachers on this calendar. And then we have revisions to next year's calendar. The district went and looked at this calendar based on the number of snow days that we had this year. We currently only had 1 built-in snow day for 21-22, and we added 2 additional built-in emergency closure days. And then we have 1 new student club at Radnor Middle School, the RMS Garden Club, and the administration would ask that the curriculum committee move these forward to the full board for consideration.
All right. Does anyone on the committee have any questions about these agenda items?
I think I know this, but I would like some clarification on why the Varsity Brands contract is coming to curriculum, when I think typically something like that would have gone through either finance or the GRCC based on the subject matter.
Certainly. Mr. Petiti and myself are the co-chairs, and we're fortunate to have Mr. Petiti on here. We're working to get the contract squared away and missed the timing for the GRCC meeting. So we wanted to bring it through committee before bringing it through the full board. And in order for the committee to continue to move forward with hitting the goals that we've set, we had to bring it here because the next board meeting is next week.
Okay, so this is in keeping with kind of our board protocol of not sending things directly to the board if there's a committee that could review it in time before the board meeting.
We have historically brought action items to one of the committees and have experience here where in the past, if finance missed a contract or something, that based on when we received it from whatever organization, we would put that on curriculum, and other committees would show reciprocity for us or for other committees that needed to move something forward for board action.
Okay, thank you.
I had one question about the graduation contract. This may seem silly, but it says there's a rain date. It's not planned to be outdoors, is it? At Villanova?
I'll take that. Yes, inside, we are not available to use the Finneran Pavilion. They are actually not using it for their own graduation this year. We are using the outside stadium. So that is where their graduations are going to be for the underclassmen graduates, but also for the, graduate school. We will be using that stadium, and we have a rain date for that reason.
So it wasn't a silly question after all.
No, not at all.
Actually, a very important question. Okay. All right. And so are you going to, because you're outside, going to be able to have like the band there and some of the other elements that are traditional for graduation?
Absolutely. That actually, they've been incredibly generous with the amount of people that we can have. Allowing 4 guests per, for each family is more than fair. So we were actually meeting with them on Friday, Mrs. Goldman, to iron out all of those details so that we know.
Okay, great. All right. Well, you never
It'll
know.
be
when a silly
beautiful,
question is a
rain or
good
shine.
question. Okay, thank you. So
Yep.
it's not a 2-day rain event.
Oh, jeez. Well, thanks
No,
for
we're
putting
just
that in my head to worry about now.
I have a question about that same contract. Can you just compare it to what we paid when we went downtown to, yeah,
Temple.
people.
Down the
Yeah.
temple.
What did we, thank you. What did we pay when we went down to Philly? Does anybody remember?
We can certainly get that information for you. That
I don't.
that's something we can look up, but I don't have that off the top of my head.
But is this in line with what we would expect to pay for a college venue, do you think?
It's in line. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bechtel.
Go ahead, Mrs. Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's in line with, what we've come to expect from Villanova. It may be a little pricier, not anything significant though, because it is outside. However, making your comparison to Temple, there were enormous costs with transportation, other things that we don't usually have for graduation that we have to remember was in those contracts.
Yeah, I actually like the thought that it's going to be outside because people like to pretend that COVID's over, but it's really not. And it's very much still in Delaware County. So it's probably, this is a fine year to be outside, in my opinion. So that's probably a good thing. All right.
We're just so happy to be back there.
Dr. Babson, anything with contracts? You good to go? Okay. Let's move right on. Let's move into item 4.2, which is the world language audit findings.
All right, and I am going to turn it over. We've got Mr. Booterball here, who is our world language curriculum supervisor, and he has got a team here with him that has helped to work very diligently on looking at our programming for world language, and will be helping to present the highlights of all the wonderful things that we're doing. So Mr. Booterball, thank you and your team for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtold. As we get started, if you could so kindly share your screen so the public can see the presentation posted in item 4.2. As we get started again, Mr. Bechtold captured it right. It's a team approach to the world language audit. World language is rather unique just because we do have 4 separate and distinct languages. So, just to give you a quick overview of the presentation this evening, we have 4 different teachers, which I'll introduce as we get to their language, which they teach. And they'll talk more specifically about what's happening in their language and work they've done the past couple of years during the world language audit and process. So the first part of the presentation is kind of give you an overview, make some connections. At the very end, there is a segment for questions. I know we had a couple inquiries already, and ideally some of our language teachers that teach French or German can talk about their specific language, what it looks like in their classroom. So again, we're thrilled to have them with us. And to get started, we'll go to the first slide. The second slide on the audit review cycle. So again, the format of this presentation should look similar if you were looking at the prior, I think it was posted, the tech ed or the science one initially posted in March, or the one coming later, the seating 4.3, the science audit. Again, the format is very similar for consistency. So again, that's what the typical review cycle looks like. However, living in a pandemic, some things aren't typical anymore. And so what sort of happened is the audits become more of a 2-year process. Originally, we were supposed to share this last spring, late spring, May, June, but given the pandemic, it just wasn't feasible to even finish the audit. So some of the work we've done sort of blur between the lines. It's not necessarily that clean, but again, we have very passionate teachers here that have done amazing work. They're going to share with you this evening. Moving on to the next slide, it just lists the different folks that were involved with the audit and process. So the first 2 on there, Alicia Alfonso and Tom Hagen, they really do an outstanding job. Alicia in particular, at the high school, she's the department chair and our Spanish teacher, and then Tom Hagen, the middle school department chair and Latin teacher. So again, they both give their perspective, what's been happening. So one of the key items, if you later in this evening's presentation, item 4.4, I believe, Dr. Kearney is going to talk about the different things happening in an audit cycle. And there's a nice 2-page spreadsheet there. And one of the things that happen is you get together as a vertical team. And you think of vertical team, it's a 6 through 12 program. So the 6th grade middle school teachers are talking with the high school teachers, looking at curriculum, pacing, planning, alignment, standards. And I think about 2 years now we've relaunched the vertical team. Last year we got cut short due to the pandemic, but I think it was 2019, 2020, we all got together, and how it would look is each language has at least one representative for the middle school. In some cases, like a Latin, there's only one middle school teacher. So it's kind of unique in that regard. We had a handful of teachers, 7 of them traveled to the actual conference we'll talk about later. So again, along the audit process, all 16 members were involved, giving their feedback, their technology, sharing, collaborating. So we hear more about that throughout the presentation. So again, the rest of the members were participating in some capacity and shared their information with us on this presentation. Moving on, skipping 2 slides to our middle school and high school overview. So to start with the middle school, just how it looks, I've shared this before, but for anyone listening or not familiar with the middle school, how the world language program works is it's a semester-based program where half of the 6th grade class, let's say an average class is 300. So in the fall semester, 150 students are, they get a walkthrough, typically around 15 instructional days of each of the 4 core languages. So during this rotation, they get 15 days of French, German, Latin, and Spanish. And some of the teachers do vary. As I mentioned, we have several Spanish teachers in the middle school, 2 French teachers, 1 Latin and 1 German. So they get to meet maybe their teacher they'll be teaching the following year. And at the end of the semester, they select which language they want to pursue in 7th grade. And then the other half of the grade, the other half of 6th grade in the spring semester, usually around early February, those 150 students go through the same rotation where they're spending about 15 instructional days in each of those 4 languages. And then sometime late May, early June, once they get through all the 4 rotations, they elect which language to study. So again, that's the first year at Radnor Township School District of a world language. When you move on to 7th grade, how it's structured is you take the language you picked in 6th grade, and it's an every other day course. So an example would be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday have a Spanish class in 7th grade. The following week it'd be Tuesday and Thursday. Usually what happens when they're not in, say, Spanish class, they would have their other courses, say they have phys ed, health, art, facts, whatever course would fit in there. So again, it's an every other day course in 7th grade. Then when you move on to 8th grade, how it's structured, it's 5 days a week, every single day, Monday through Friday. They're meeting for 40 some minutes to learn their language in preparation for the high school. So again, that 8th grade world language class is looking much similar to a level 2 or a 9th grade course, where more language, more spoken language in the native tongue, and our teachers can talk more to that as they teach in the middle school. So again, after that 8th grade year, the majority of students move on to a level 2 in 9th grade, depending on where you're at. Sometimes students get to a 1-2 combined course, which we'll talk again in more detail later. And just like 8th grade, when you're in 9th grade taking the language, it's meeting every single day. It's one of our core classes, so we have a unique schedule at the high school. It's like a blended block where there's some 8-period days and some 4-block period days. So again, they have the same instructional minutes as a math class or a science class would. And the last thing to note here about the high school, the middle school only has 1 level. So just 8th grade Spanish, for instance, where you get to 9th grade, and then throughout the duration through 12th grade, if you just decide to pursue all the way to an AP Spanish, for instance, there's 2 levels. There's an advanced or a grade level, and then the honors level. Just like any other honors course at the high school, it is weighted. So it does come with the weight attached to it. So if you got a 4.0 in A and an advanced, and an honors would be 4.33. So again, all 4 languages have 2 levels at 9 through 12. Moving on to the next slide. During the audit process, we referenced and reviewed multiple sources and data points. So if you're looking along the long list here, I guess it's through page 6. We had folks reaching out to other districts. We had a handful of members, 7 go to a national conference. 1, Mrs. Segal, which is here with us, presented at that conference. There was a survey issued last March to parents, 41 responders to the survey. Other professional organizations looking at the scope and sequence, which again, with teaching in a virtual hybrid pandemic mode, some of those pacing guides had to be adjusted to reflect what we're able to get through and the environment we're faced with. Moving down the list, we've had new different textbook adoptions the past 2 years. The middle school did a program review. We got feedback from that a couple of years ago. And ACTFL, American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, is one of the primary organizations in which our teachers participate and pull information from. Okay, moving on to our 7th slide, and looking at those different data points, just trying to capture the different strengths that we heard from the survey through the middle school program review, parent survey, is that they have excellent teachers in the world language program. In particular, many of our teachers have lived in the native country for different durations of time. And so having that type of teacher in front of you can really connect and relate and find that passion that they bring. And it's also a culturally diverse group of teachers, the 16 members of the middle school and high school team. Next, we do find it's a very high interest level. Different schools, when I say schools, different high schools have different requirements for graduation. Radnor strongly encourages 2 years of a world language, preferably in the same language. So one of the things you're going to find out if you look down the middle of the slide, versus look at the student participation level, how many students are requesting to pursue a language at the high school. And so throughout the last 3 years, looking at, I think it's 5 there on the list, or 6, we're seeing a trend upward. So we have more and more students electing to take a world language every year. One of the questions was, what does that look like for a percent? So any given year, we typically have almost 1,200 students at the high school the past 3 years. It fluctuates. Kids are enrolling, kids are withdrawing. So, anywhere from like, say, 76 to 82%. So, in 2020, 76%, 2021, 77%, and then next year, 82%. So again, that's how many students are requesting it. Some students happen to take 2 languages. So request doesn't always equal a student. We do have some very ambitious multilingual students in our high school. A couple other notes from the slide we're looking at. Differentiated instruction, so all students got meaningful language experience. One of the things we're working on with the humanities departments, you've heard in a prior presentation, is a consolidation of our academic levels. So for instance, in next year, 2021, 2022, social studies and English, they have that advanced level where they're differentiating a variety of levels in that classroom. And our world language teachers are doing it at the middle school and high school, where you could be a gifted education student or a special education student, and you're learning the language in the classroom. And our students, some of them have lived abroad, some we have international students. So again, we have a wide range of abilities in one classroom, and our teachers do a remarkable job of trying to reach the students where they're at and continue to have them grow. Another bullet here. Rigorous courses, advanced placement in all 4 languages. So we have students go all the way through AP, and the AP, as we heard earlier from Mrs. Principal Kevgis, is that we do have several weeks of AP testing this year. And one of the things that's unique about the AP language, you have to take it in person as May approaches. Another thing that's a big strength is more voice and choice for students. One of the biggest improvements probably from this audit is that we have entry-level courses at the high school. So any student that wants to start a language or perhaps switch a language, they can take a level 1 or a level 1-2 combined course. And so some of the feedback we had a few years ago is like, once you made that decision in 6th grade, like I want to study French or Spanish, you're almost locked into that language for 3, 4, 5 years because it's very difficult to switch. Now we have students that are able to choose between languages. Maybe they take 2 or 3 years of it and want to try something else. So again, if you're asking why are the numbers increasing, it's a direct correlation to that voice and choice, that they do have the option to switch or even take 2 if they so choose. And finally, last bullet on the page, opportunities for language learning and practice outside the classroom. So again, with the pandemic, some of these things we look to resume in the near future. We have different service clubs, field trips overseas, independent studies, international week, or some of the feedback we have from the surveys. With the independent study, how that typically looks is, you're a senior, you've kind of went through the language progression, you still have an interest in studying something. And occasionally you might have a student that's interested in Greek or Italian or what have you. We're talking like a very, very small percent of students, and they might have an agreement with a teacher that volunteers to work with them. But again, that's we're talking, just less than a handful of kids a year. But again, some of them do have that passion. We try to provide the opportunity when possible. Okay, on to our next slide, slide 8. Some recommendations for improvement. First up is update curriculum and pacing guides, reflect the new courses, hybrid learning, and the new textbooks. One of the things that I've heard positive feedback is in Spanish, from the time you're in 7th grade all the way through Spanish 5, you're using the Senderos textbook. So consistency, it has an online platform, the Sendero Super Site, where you practice your skills. We started adopting this about 2 years ago. So when the pandemic hit, it was perfect to have that platform at home where it could be fully virtual and engaging in the curriculum. So some of those things do require adjusting, especially with the hybrid model we found. The research and looking for a new Latin textbook with a digital platform. So unlike Spanish, Mr. Hagen didn't have ones that presented some challenges during teaching virtually in the pandemic. One of the things we're also looking at is enrollment, and some of our languages have increasing enrollment. One example is French, that we might be able to run 3 or 4 sections at one level. In particular, we might have a true level 1 French class next year. Exploring language opportunities is one of the things we heard from the parent survey. So in the parent survey, meaning the 41 that responded were elementary parents, and one of the things they would love to see is some kind of elementary opportunity. And checking with the elementary folks, a few years ago, we had after school language club, but I don't believe any of the clubs are running right now at the elementary level with the pandemic. That's something that'd be great to see start back up again. One of the challenges we found with elementary programming is just the time, instructional time. Where do you take it from to add a language? I know we want to talk about STEM at a previous board meeting. So again, it's something that we can continue to look to improve upon, is finding opportunities at the elementary level. So you're not just getting some, exposure in 6th grade that's happening in the elementary level. Another area of improvement would be the middle school and high school transition. And to address that, we've really looked at that vertical team where a couple times a year, the middle school language teacher and the high school language teacher are sitting down and talking about what they're doing, what they're teaching, how they deliver instruction. And that way there's that consistency. And I think that's been an area of improvement the past 2 to 3 years. And finally, the exploratory program in 6th grade was mixed reviews. Some folks thought it was just enough. Other parents felt that we should have it every day, just like a core class in 6th grade. Like any other thing, it's kind of like a seesaw effect, where if you're adding, a daily class, you have to lose something from another program or additional staffing. So it's something we want to look at to see if there's a way to maybe deliver a better instructional model. But again, there's always, pros and cons to it. And sometimes you have to give and take to get that added to the daily schedule. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Just talking about some of the recommendations that we already started to implement at the middle school and high school. And referencing this early, you can take 2 language if you really wanted to at the high school. We do have some motivated students that like to do so, or you can switch languages. I think having that level 1 entry at all 4 languages at the high school has been very impactful. In the last 2 years we've been running it, you see the numbers increasing. The vertical teams, again, for 2 years now, we've had the opportunity to meet. We got together last fall and the year before, just looking at the alignment. And one of the things I found out with the language teachers, Spanish in particular, there's a handful of the middle school and high school, and they share the resources through OneNote SharePoint. So they have a nice engaging lesson. They put it up there. They can take it, modify it. So prior to this, the old curriculum documents we'll call them static, where it's hard to take, modify, and adjust. This really helps with sharing and putting new ideas out to the whole team.
Ryan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you please make the presentation full screen? Be a little easier to read.
I think Mr. Bechtold has the screen sharing feature. I don't know if you can maximize that.
Full screen that. This makes it a little easier to read.
Certainly, we'll see if we can.
So it is a web link from Board Docs, and it is not a PowerPoint presentation, Mr. Babson or Dr. Babson. So I can certainly zoom in if that would be helpful.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Ryan.
No worries. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're on to my final slide before I pass it off to our teachers to share all the wonderful things they're doing inside the classroom. So the last slide for me before I pass it off is just talking about the things that are happening in the district. World Language, they work so closely with different departments and initiatives and programs. And just to note a few, is, I was just talking about this in the previous slide, the technology integration study. So, it was perfect timing with the pandemic that now our students at the high school have a one-to-one device. They have a Surface Go device, and some of the things they can talk more about in the classroom, but the OneNote, the sharing, some of the teachers are using that to provide instruction. With the world language, you can translate, you can dictate. We're talking about AP testing. They may be taking their AP test on their Surface Go device at home, perhaps. So again, all these different things that we're now able to do thanks to the integration of technology in our curriculum. But you'll hear more details from our teachers in a few minutes. Our next area, diversity, equity, inclusion. Again, you think about culture and community. If you look at the state standards about building community, our district vision and mission about global citizenship, all those things, align and connect to world languages. We also talk a lot about our equity team is like the windows and mirrors idea of like when the students come to a class and they're reading or they're participating in class, read a book or a story, is it a window they see through that they haven't had this experience in the cultural experience before, or is it a mirror that reflects where they're from and who they are? So again, our teachers you hear from later do a nice job just bringing in culture and inclusion into the classroom. And finally, with our new 339 K-12 school program, our world language teachers really open the doors for job opportunities and employability. Some of the statistics that you start to hear about, that more than half of the world is multilingual. A third of our American businesses have some overseas corporation. So again, if you're thinking about the global market or different jobs, translator, teacher, world language teacher, just some of the opportunities as we're exposing our students to these career pathways, and our teachers will talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation. Finally, their next couple of slides, the next 4 slides, just to share what the overview again is that we met in February, all the world language teachers, and we really asked them is what's the state of the state? Like what's happening in your language right now in the pandemic as we're finishing up the audit. And so, some of this information is from the middle school, some from the high school, and I'm going to let each of the 4 teachers share their language. So in our first slide, we have Mrs. Corinna Segal, our French teacher. She's going to begin. Again, she does have a wide range of teaching. She does teach the middle school this year, and she teaches all of it through her AP French program. So Mrs. Segal.
Yeah, do you mind scrolling down? Yeah, so bonsoir. Thanks for having us all. I'm lucky that also at some point I taught in the 6th grade and I taught German. So some kids know me as Frau Segal. Then I taught Spanish. So it gave me kind of a nice overview. This year I teach all French. So we have seen, especially in French over the last 4 years, because of the continuity, and, we have, the same teachers, and seen a lot of increase in enrollment. And now we have at some levels, we have actually 4 classes. We have 2 honors classes, for instance, 2 French 1-2 combined. So it's a huge increasement there. We have started researching new interactive books, and especially for the 1-2 for French 2 advanced and French 3 advanced, because the book we are using, while it's a good book, it's really old, and I need to, I remember I keep bringing in my Walkman because kids had no idea what that was. So really we need to use something with a digital platform. And also eventually for French 4 and 5 advanced. In the honors classes and in the other classes, we had already introduced new textbooks a few years ago. We're also looking more into readers to be used in French 2 and 3 advanced. The Spanish teachers have had a lot of success with it. And for me, teaching several languages, it's like great to see what works in other classes. And I did it 2 years ago. I used the TPRS reader and the French 1-2 combined, and it really was good to looping the kids in and to having them use the language in a really communicative context. So we're revamping the French curriculum, continue to also over the summer. Nearly this has been going on for the last 2 years, especially since COVID started. Most teachers, especially French, for myself, I use the OneNote class notebook for everything. It allows me to give instant feedback, see what the students are doing, or Flipgrid, Book Creator, Nearpod, Edpuzzle, Yabla. These are just some of the platforms we use and continue to evaluate and see how we can assess and really engage students at every level and better differentiate. We also had really good results in the AP exams in June of 2020, and also in the Grand Concours. Students elect to take it. I had last year in the middle of Corona, they met with me and they took the Grand Concours. The students just took it, so we don't have the results yet, but that's also something we are happy to offer, and the kids enjoy doing it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Segal. And we may ask a question or two at the very end, so please stay on for a few minutes.
Sorry that I realized there's and also we started with the French club, and Ryan, Mr. Budaba already mentioned the ACTFL conference.
Again, thank you. So moving on to our second language, German, we have Mrs. Claudia Silberman with us to share what's happening in German.
Okay, guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. So we keep going strong with German at the middle school and at the high school. We have at the high school levels 2, 3, and 4 in the AP who took the National German exam. Again, this in January. The students have been taking this National German exam over the years and have been doing very well. We were actually lucky that just before COVID happened, the summer before, we had 2 winners. This is something that happens only every several years, that students actually win the trip to Germany. It is our top students, when they reach the gold, they have to first receive a gold medal in the National German exam. So it's our top students that sometimes get a gold medal, not in every level every year. But 2 years ago, 2 girls who won the gold medal, they went to an interview and did so well in the interviews that they got a free trip to Germany. So they spent 3 weeks in Bavaria and Würzburg with families, homestay, went to school, a German school. They took a trip for 10 days to Berlin, and they had a wonderful time. 2 years before that, another one of our German students won that trip to Germany. So it was just perfect timing, because last summer and this summer, of course, all these trips are canceled. The National German exam is still happening and they get their awards, but there's no trip, of course, this year. So I'm very glad that that happened a couple of years ago for 2 girls at the same time, the same summer. We've never had that before, that the 2 spots that are given out to the whole region both came to Radnor High School, which was wonderful. We continue with our Sabine and Michael program. That is the program that we are starting our students with in the middle school. It's a story-based program. It's very adaptable, relates, connects to the students very well. And we take that into the high school through the different advanced levels, in 9th grade also for the honors level, Sabine and Michael. Stepping Stones is a curriculum that Herr Shi is teaching in 4 and 5 advanced, and also uses it partially in his AP course. And it says here, we have had excellent results for the German AP exams. In June of 2020, 3 students got the top mark of 5, and 3 students got a 4. Grenzenlos Deutsch is a new program that I discovered and that I'm trying out right now with our 3 and 4 honors. It's an interactive course. It's based completely online with a lot of materials for listening, for speaking, for writing. It's a very new program, and also has a lot of interesting features because it integrates all kinds of backgrounds that people might bring to a language. Also, it's very pays a lot of attention to gender issues and how the language responds to gender awareness. So it's really interesting. OneNote is being implemented in all the courses, just how Madame Segal was saying. They are doing it in French. All our courses use OneNote and OneNote Notebook. We continue with many materials that come from Germany. Klar und Deutlich is our newspaper, a student newspaper that we're using in all the levels, all in German, with the newest materials, things that are happening right now in Germany. We get that every week, a new updated newsletter with many exercises. And so it's very engaging and interesting. There is another news site that we like to use regularly. It's called logo.de. This comes from German public television. It's meant for German kids and teenagers, and we play it in the classroom. It's up to date 7 times a week, and this gives the kids a wonderful window into the world of the German language and what's happening at the moment, what the current events are, the current news that are interesting for kids and teenagers in German-speaking countries. Deutsche Welle is another excellent resource, and the Tagesschau is a news program that we regularly use from public television in Germany. Yes, ACTFL conference. I went to the ACTFL conference with many other teachers from the department, and another program that was attended by Herr Shi was the BICS, the Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills conference that he went to. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's it, right?
Can I piggyback on that on one more thing that German has implemented this year too? Hershey has an online world language curriculum. He implemented this year with the resources for multiple languages for the hybrid, virtual, and in-person environment. So he's also has that in this current year, and he will continue using it. And not only he's using it, but it's also available for all the languages because it's a multi-language program platform. But he is piloting it this year, so we'll be hearing from him and hopefully implementing it as well in the other languages. Thank you.
Thank you. And on to our Latin program, we have Mr. Tom Hagan from the middle school.
All right. Just want to make sure I'm using the microphones of my AirPods. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Hello, everybody. As Mr. Budabal said, I'm Tom Hagan. I'm the Latin teacher at the middle school, World Language Department Chair, and I'm here to give us our Latin overview. So first and foremost, we have a whole bunch of our students, as you can see here, who take what's called the National Latin Exam. It's a yearly exam to test the students' knowledge of Latin, but also the culture and mythology and history of the Romans. Our 3, 4, 5, and AP students took an additional exam called the Medusa Mythology exam, which even goes more in depth into obviously the mythology portion of the Latin curriculum. And in addition, we have students from both RMS and RHS participate in the Philadelphia Classical Society competition for art and academic exams. This is an awesome way for students who maybe don't perform necessarily academically the best, but are very artistically gifted, or both, you never know, who just make these, especially some of our Radnor High School students have made these amazing paintings and pictures and things that win are up for Best in Show, actually. We've had a Best in Show category contender quite a few years now. It's amazing. In addition, we developed a blended curriculum across all of our levels, and we use our OneNotes, Schoology, YouTube, as well as other materials. Dr. McGay at the high school developed a curriculum for the new 1-2 Advanced course that goes along with the textbook Classical Latin. Mr. Budabar already brought this up, but I would, at the middle school, like to explore possibly looking into a new textbook, because my 8th grade textbook, I called to get a few extra copies ordered this year, and turns out it's out of print. So something that to kind of figure out in the nearish future. Dr. McGay attended the ACTFL conference in November 2019, and as you can see as well, our Latin students do very well on our AP exams, and it's just, I'm so proud of our program from middle school through high school.
Buenas noches.
My name is Alicia Alfonso, and I am the Spanish department chair and also the Spanish teacher at the high school. We are very, very lucky to have a big, strong, solid program at the high school and at the middle school as well, which is our big feeder to the high school. As you can see in the PowerPoint, we offer levels 2, honors levels in levels 2, 3, and 4, all the way to AP, and advanced also from levels 1 all the way to level 5. We have been very lucky. The students are extremely strong, solid students with excellent results in the AP, and it's been consistent pretty much for many years. We also attended to our students last year, because due to the pandemic, were not able to, this year, able to attend the oral expo for the local chapter of the American Association of Teachers for Spanish and Portuguese. But last year, that expo happened in February. So we were very lucky to attend, and our students did extremely well. This is a competition, which is basically students from the local area. We have students from, mainly from the private schools, and it's held in the Haverford School of Boys in here in Haverford. And they did very well. They earned gold and silver medals, and their levels are from levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. This year, due to the pandemic, the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese did not have expo this year. We also, as you heard before, we've also implemented the new textbook, Senderos, and now we started in level 2, and it's in middle school, level 1, and then level 1 and 2, and now it's also for levels 3, 4, and 5. So there will be a good consistency and transition from the middle school all the way to the high school. In the honors level, we do use a different textbook, but it's in continuation of that same program from levels 2 all the way to the level 4. And they all have very good online platforms, authentic materials as well. We did, as Madame Segal mentioned, we did have, starting last year, we started implementing the Spanish readers, which is for a lot of the Fluency Matters program, in which is a lot of comprehensible input, and the students really, really enjoy those. It's very short readers, but they use the language in class, and they feel like, wow, I can read a short story and understand it and implement it and use it, and they really are excited about that. This last year, 4 teachers attended the ACTFL conference as well, and we also participate in a lot of online programs that currently are offered by the Spanish Embassy and also by ACTFL and other different, and by the AATSP. So we are participating online to make sure that we are, on top of things. And one thing that we are pretty proud of is we are doing what's on the cutting edge, and we feel like, wow, it's validating what we're doing in the classroom and in Radnor High School as well. So it's very validating. As usual, we continue working on making our classes interactive using Flipgrid, Nearpod, Edpuzzle. We found a new, Hershey introduced us to Gimkit, which is another excellent interactive program. Screencasting, of course, OneNote has been an invaluable tool in this virtual hybrid learning, and the kids are doing very well and thriving with that. And just to wrap it up, one unique thing about languages in our world language program at the Radnor Township School District is such an interdisciplinary course. We touch about everything in our classes. We cover so many different areas. So it's a very comprehensive, wholesome program, and the students learn about not only about the language, but the language in the culture, in art, in literature, in history, in sports, in everything, trying to make sure that the students make those connections and to their real life and feel like a big connections and making those relationships, which are very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And after hearing all of those wonderful things, I am mindful of the time. I know there's 2 more action items this evening. So this last slide before we get to the questions, just capture some of the different benefits of studying a language. We have a large amount of students, like over 75%, taking a language, and often that's why. Some of the benefits by ACTFL of studying the cognitive benefits. You can see many benefits: memory function, student performance as well in the middle area, just standardized test scores, reading achievement, performance at college level, and also some of the benefits of being multilingual. I mentioned a few of these statistics earlier in the presentation about how the world is becoming more connected and interconnected than ever before. Just broadens your employment opportunities. About a third of corporations, United States corporations, are owned or based abroad. About close to 2/3 of the world can speak more than one language, and 17's number can certainly grow here. That only 70% of Americans are multilingual. And other just debate, careers, national security, cognitive advantages, and interesting facts about participating in the language. And as Senor Alfonso said, just the different things they bring to the classroom about the history, the art, the culture, social, emotional, just so many different components of it. It's not just learning how to speak a language. So I do know we're short on time, so I want to open it up to a couple questions here at the very end. And we have our 4 language teachers with us that, some of the specific questions they could probably answer if you heard anything or wonder anything from the presentation.
So yeah, what a fantastic program. I mean, just really something to be so proud of in the district. I'm going to throw this to the committee members. Does anyone have anything they'd like to specifically highlight regarding the presentation?
Sebastian has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like looking all over the screen. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It was more of a comment really, but I've been through the language program and I've had Mr. Hagan as my Latin teacher. And I had a very positive experience through it. I also have I'd say like multicultural background with my mom being Mexican and my dad being Dutch. And I think that it is very important to have kind of that different perspective or background where you can kind of see how different people from different countries or cultures think and process. And my brother as well is experiencing that in an internship that he's doing, where he's working with people from across the globe and has to see like everyone has a different way of doing business or communicating. And I think that his background is similar to mine, helps him through that. One thing that I've also found very interesting in the presentation was the possibility to get children in the elementary school level learning like a language. It is much easier to learn a language when the younger you are. I grew up, like my mom was speaking Spanish to me at an early age, so I was able to pick it up relatively easily, and like going to trips to Mexico over the summer helped me get that really like solidified. Dutch is not my forte. I can understand it, but I can't speak it as much because I learned it at a later date. So if there was something that we could, a program or something, like I think that the earlier you start learning a language, the more it really sticks with you. And I think that'd be interesting, the possibilities that we could see starting kids even at the elementary school level.
Yeah, thank you for that firsthand observation. We have discussed in the past, some, we used to call it FLES, foreign language in the elementary school. It has been a topic on the school board for many years. The problem in elementary school is just, you've only got so much time in the box. And, unfortunately, I think would love to put that in, but what would we get rid of? That was sort of the problem. Anyway, thank you for those comments. Really relevant. Any other committee members have any observations? Yeah, Ms. Goldman.
Again, thank you for the presentation. I just think I'm blown away by the increase in participation in world language. and especially the revival in French. I remember I watched that language sort of seem to start to go slide down, and only a few years ago, and now to see it back up. And I'm wondering if there's anything in particular that you would attribute this increased participation, both in world language overall and French in particular, that you're noticing. Any reason for that?
I'll pass it to one of the department chairs or Madame Segal, if you'd like to share your
Aside
perspective.
from the good teachers, I mean,
Well,
put that
of course,
aside.
given, right.
Are there other factors that are contributing to the increased participation?
I would say for French, I mean, I have to say that Ms. King in middle school is a fabulous French teacher. And I think just the consistency. I mean, people have been around for a few years. 4 years ago, there was a rough spot. And I think the kids, enjoy and they relate to the teacher and just, I mean, we're a really strong department who works well together and who learns from each other. And I think the kids pick up on that, and also that we all differentiating and I don't know, Alicia or Claudia or Tom. That's just for French.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm glad that you mentioned differentiating too. I know that there are some students for whom learning a foreign language is challenging, and and if you can just briefly touch on how you help students through your differentiation to be able to feel successful in the pursuit of language when, especially if you have, for example, a learning-based language disorder. It's not, if you have trouble with the English language, not even because you're not a native English speaker, but just language processing is challenging for you. How do you help make learning a world language more accessible for that kind of student?
Mrs. Goldman, are you addressing that question for the French or world language in general?
Just world language in general. You mentioned differentiation, and I know you guys are really committed to that. So maybe you could just succinctly tell everybody a thing or two that you do to help a student along that for whom acquiring another language is more challenging.
Yeah, I mean,
can just, sorry.
Oh,
I can go, Tom.
Okay. All right.
You can all weigh
I
in.
can. We're all just too excited to answer. I just from the middle school level, that's something we deal with a lot, because especially in your 6th and 7th grades, and as well as your 8th grades, we are dealing with a group that is mixed, whereas in the high school you can go into honors or advanced. Academically, it's a lot more diverse in a middle school classroom. So, I know just from my perspective, one of the ways that I help to differentiate is I start to kind of gauge and pre-assess like how much the kids know about, or I should say, remember their English grammar. I'll go, okay, we're going to learn about direct objects. Does anybody remember what a direct object is off the top of their head? And I'll go, and I wait for that silence that I'm hearing right now. And I'll go, okay, well, let's first go back and we're going to show which is English first. Okay, let's do little arrows from the subject to the verb to the direct object and all that. And that's, by the way, no shot at our language arts teachers. They do an amazing job. It's just sometimes they forget the technical terms up here, but doing that, relating it to English before bringing it into the language can be really helpful and can help kids make connections that maybe if you just say, okay, well, here's the language, go, they're not going to get.
I also was going to mention that the middle school, they had people coming in specifically teaching the middle school teachers how to do differentiated instruction. And so I asked if I could be part of that group, and that really gave me a lot of skills, just the pre-assessment, see where students are, sometimes homogeneous grouping, sometimes heterogeneous grouping, a student choice that they, there's always an anchor activity, the students who already achieved that can go a little further. I mean, because especially when we had the French 1-2 combined, there was a huge level of, differences there. And I was going to say something else, but now I gave it to Tom and now I forgot. But yeah, and also we are now offering tutoring, also support for the inward languages starting this week. So the students can come to that. For myself, I have Office, I have all these things where students can come and then get, the scaffolding they need. So yeah, I think that helps.
Yeah, and just to wrap, in the high school, since they mentioned middle school, the nice thing about this, in the languages, it just lends itself so nicely to do the differentiating instruction. We can deal with the listening, with the kinesthetic learner, with all the different kinds of the musical learner, and we have all the different online platforms that allows that, like for the student that needs that extra reinforcement for them to master, there's so many valuable materials out there, alternative assessments. If you don't want, you can always have a different kind of assessment in order to help a student be able to be successful, because our whole goal is for them to be able to communicate and to be successful in the language, so they feel that they're going to be producing and communicating. And we have so much flexibility due to the whole big spectrum that we offer and all the different resources that we have. So I think it just lends itself very nicely.
And if I could just add one more thing to that, thank you very much for sharing. I think also, I feel we have a lot of support in Radnor. It starts, I think, with Mr. Bechtold and the board curriculum committee, like Dr. Babson and Lady Solomon have been with this program for a while. I know Dr. Babson's passionate about language, building principles, Mrs. Kevgis and Dr. Weidlich. They've been very supportive. Our teachers, we talked to them, we're thinking about trying this. Dr. Kearney would jump in and lend his expertise. So I really feel that we have the support when they want to, investigate a new way of teaching or a new program. Mr. Hagan mentioned the Teaching, Learning, Succeeding with Dr. Pete Grant at the middle school. That really provided the tools, as Madam Segal mentioned, to differentiate that one level class, heterogeneous class. So again, I think those type of things really make the students feel supported, that they're learning, they're developing, and the teachers have the tools and resources to enable them to do so. So again, I think there's a lot of components, not just a one short answer why it is expanding and growing.
Right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to answer that. This is not a question, it's a comment. And that is that you mentioned earlier your sense of community. And I've seen that, because sometimes when I go places around Radnor, I see the world language team all together. And that's kind of nice, because I think maybe that spirit of working together also probably has a positive effect on the department. You seem to all support one another, and it's clear your passion for your professional development and success for your students really is coming through. So thanks for the presentation today.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. And very informative, and it always,
Sarah and
makes
Andrew
us,
have questions, Lydia. Just
we're going to have to move on to the science audit or the science audit, or we're never going to get through it. And we've already punted it one
Lydia,
month
I'll
later.
be really brief, because I would just echo everything everybody else said. But the one thing I would challenge, I think all of these language teachers understand, as at some point in my life, I've spoken all 4 of these languages. I never was good at speaking Latin, but I did take the class. One of the things that's really valuable is to travel and to live, even for a brief time, in a country where these languages are spoken. I know they said we've had some students win travel to Germany, but I think to the extent that you as a department can encourage students to look into exchange programs. I was a Rotary exchange student in Argentina for a year. I think that's a really beneficial program, Rotary or other exchanges, that our students should consider. And I think that you have the unique insight into students who might really benefit from that experience generally. So I would hope that that's something you might look at. But otherwise, great job. You guys are doing a really wonderful job, and I appreciate everything you're doing.
Lydia, I know thank you, Sarah. Lydia, I know we're short on time, but I just have to say thank you to our wonderful department, our wonderful teachers. As Dr. Budbar said a minute ago, very close to my heart, this issue of languages. Couple points. So it might be difficult to convey to people the value of learning languages and learning how to use them, because there aren't really many technical applications in terms of direct channels to jobs. Oftentimes we talk about education as how it connects to the work world. Again, there are certain technical skills that you can gain that lead directly to certain jobs, but with languages, that's not the case. There's more of a general kind of educative value. So there's a German word Bildung, And then there's a French word, formation. It's a more of a whole person kind of human development perspective, right? Sebastian, you said it perfectly, honestly. It was great to hear from you, because I think, especially right now, I think it's very important for people to be able to step outside of their own worldview or horizon, and to be able to understand the worldview and the concerns of others. And developing multilingual competence is a very powerful way to do that. So thanks, Lydia, for letting me chime in there. Appreciate it.
Right. I think everyone hears the support from the board for the language program. And so we're in no way cutting that short, but we have to move on to science, which is also very important to us.
Right, thank
Let's
you. And
move to-
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Kearney, I'm going to turn it over to you and Doc Molman, and you guys can go through.
All right, thank you all very much. We are happy to be here tonight to share with you the results of the science curriculum audit. You saw this cycle that we followed as part of the world language presentation, as well as the tech ed presentation last month, pardon me. And like those other areas, science was also postponed due to COVID, so it was spread out over 2 years. The science audit team is comprised of vertical team members from both the Radnor Middle School and Radnor High School, as well as one representative per grade level in our elementary schools, so that we got a nice representation of not only the different disciplines within the science department at the secondary level, but also K through 12. And although this team took the lead in doing a lot of the work for the world language audit, there was also a lot of back and forth with the departments themselves, as materials were developed and ideas were shared. Here you can see an overview of the topics that are taught in each grade level at the elementary level. Our core materials there are STC kits that take a hands-on inquiry-based approach to science lessons for each of those topics by grade level. In grades K through 2, we have approximately 30 minutes daily for half the year for science instruction. It's split with social studies for the other half of the year. That doesn't necessarily mean it's first half science and second half social studies. Oftentimes the units they'll teach one unit of science and then 1 unit of social studies, or perhaps 2 and then 1. In grades 3 through 4, we have approximately 50 minutes for science instruction, again, split with social studies over the course of the year. And in 5th grade, we have approximately 60 minutes for science instruction daily, again, split with social studies for about half of the year. At the secondary level, we have more discipline-specific approaches to our courses. So you can see here in grade 6, we teach earth science, grade 7, life science, and grade 8, physical science. We also have our integrated courses that include science instruction integrated with language arts, as well as social studies instruction. And Watershed in grade 7 and Gateways in grade 8 take a particular approach to emphasizing science as part of what they are teaching. Now, we're fortunate tonight to have Dr. Ted Molman, the Radnor High School Department Science Department Chair, as well as a member of the audit team, with us for this presentation. And he's going to give you an overview of the science program at Radnor High School, and also share with you some of the experiences of teaching science during the time of COVID-19.
Hi, I'm Ted Molman. I'm the department head and a physics teacher at the high school. It's nice to be here tonight. So we follow a pretty much traditional pathway for the 3 sciences, the 3 biggies there, biology in 9th grade, chemistry in 10th grade, and physics in 11th grade. And so we try to get them exposed to these 3 big disciplines and try to entice them to take another course in 12th grade. And most kids do take a 12th grade AP or elective course. Sometimes kids do take, say, an AP biology course while they're taking honors chemistry. So sometimes they double up. And so we offer the whole, all of the AP science courses in the department. And we offer one project Lead the Way, and we offer some other electives there. And so, like I said before, a great many students continue on to 12th grade with science, and some double up too in 12th grade. Going on to what we've been doing here during the COVID pandemic here. And so science is just such a hands-on discipline. It was extremely tricky at the end of the year last year and at the beginning of this year. And so we got our hands onto a number of different tools and a number of different methods to help us out with this hands-on while kids are at home and when kids are in school. So Gizmos was one of the first things that we used. That is a simulation program. You can tweak around one variable, like in biology, you can have light on or off of a plant and see how the carbon dioxide or oxygen levels are changing. And so you change one variable, you see what's happening to another. It's a nice simulation. There's also a website called PhETS. Sometimes we use that. It's another simulation that complements that of Gizmos. There is another, and these simulations are great, but they're a little bit removed from doing hands-on kind of science. And so, and this is kind of like building the plane mid-flight here, trying to figure out how to do this in the middle of the pandemic. And so we just discovered new ways to present things. And there was another site called Pivot Interactives, which actually videotaped a number of experiments. And you could just imagine, like, if you wanted to do speed or velocity, you could have a number of kids running across the track, and you could have a timer. You would time it and measure it, and you could just measure the speed or the velocity of those kids running across a track or something like that. So it's one step closer to actually having hands-on and doing a lab. It's not quite that, but it is one step closer. And as students started to come back in this current phase, we are doing more traditional hands-on labs for the kids. They are obviously spaced out. We have either 2 or 3 at a bench doing a traditional lab, hands-on lab, taking measurements and discovering principles that way. And we have electronically kids being brought in from the home so they can participate as best they can with these current labs. And so it has been very challenging during this pandemic, having kids in school and out of school, and trying to do as close to a lab as we possibly can during this really trying time. And I'll just wrap it up with that.
Thank you. And I think that was a general sentiment of both K-5 and 6 through 8 teachers as well, that they weren't able to have students conduct the hands-on activities and collaborative activities as they normally would. So they were finding creative ways to modify their instruction, doing more demonstrations, and in some cases having students do individual experiments where before it may have been group experiments. So there was a variety of different creative problem solving that went into trying to continue the effective science instruction under very unusual circumstances. As part of the curriculum audit, we looked at a variety of different sources of information to try and inform our decisions and get a sense of where we were as a department. We also looked at professional organizations like the National Science Teachers Association, National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the College Board. Took a look at other school districts by reviewing their websites, speaking with representatives from some of them. And in particular, we were interested in what their experiences were with science education, including their sequence of courses, what electives they might be offering, what materials they're using at various levels. We also want to pay attention to what the Pennsylvania Department of Education is doing. In 2019, PDE began a review of the state science standards that have been in effect since 2002. So they're about 20 years old. And as part of this review, it includes a very specific consideration of the next generation science standards. So we don't know exactly what the timeline for the state is, but we anticipate that there likely will be new science standards at the state level before Governor Wolf leaves office, and they may be scheduled to be implemented by 2024. Again, we're going to wait for more information and see how things progress, but it is something that's important for us to pay attention to. We also took a look at standardized testing data, including the PSSA's, Keystone, and Advanced Placement exams. That information, or a lot of that information at least, is available in the annual data report that is shared each year. So between 2017 and 2019, we continue to see high achievement in grades 4 and 8 PSSA tests, as well as the biology Keystone exam. We also saw evidence of students meeting or exceeding the growth standards for grades 4 and the Keystone exam, but there was also the evidence that some students were not meeting the growth standards in grade 8. This is not new information. It's something that's been an area of focus even at least since the time of the middle school study, and something that the middle school team in particular has been paying attention to. Since we didn't administer the PSSAs last year, and considering the unusual circumstances this year, we are interested to see what data we do get when it comes, but it's one of those things that we're going to need to continue to pay attention to and see what effect any changes have been happening. Our AP Science courses have a high number of 3s, 4s, and 5s on the AP exams, so our students are very successful who take those tests, and we're proud of those results. As mentioned during the Tech Ed audit, we also did take a look at the recommendations from the external STEM audit that was completed in 2015 to see what areas of that audit had been completed, which areas had been not completed, were there areas of focus from that we will continue to want to pay some attention to. We looked at our curriculum scope and sequence, and we did discuss the possibility of taking a more integrated approach to science and education at the middle school. We also discussed the possibility of changing the sequences courses at high school, but we didn't decide to make any of those changes at this time. We put a survey out there to parents and had responses from 53 parents in the community. In general, some of the positive areas that were themes within that survey were the high quality of our teachers, the quality of our programs starting in the elementary school and continuing through middle school and high school, and the quality of the resources that are available to our students. Some of the areas that parents suggested for improvement would be more of a focus on experiments and data analysis. They want to see connections to real life, including speakers who work in science coming in and talking to our students more. And some of them mentioned the inconsistent experiences from teacher to teacher. So it may depend to some extent the student's experience on who their teacher is any given year. A lot of teacher input went into the audit. As we've already spoken about, the audit team was comprised of teachers, and then they were sharing information with departments at the secondary level, primarily during in-service time and other times, to help us reflect upon our practices and identify areas where we want to continue to improve. One of the things that we owe a big thanks, and I owe a big thanks to the department chairs at the middle school and the high school, Shannon Reese and Dr. Molman here, is for compiling information about the status of our textbooks and materials for each of our science courses. This helps us take a look and see which of our online access is coming due, and helps us prioritize those areas where we might need to do reviews for possible renewals or replacement. Our our operations department, it was also a part of the audit, in that they contract with an organization to conduct chemical inventories and update our chemical hygiene plans at the middle school and the high school in our labs, and make recommendations about safety. So we took a look at the report that was issued by Environmental Control Systems, which is the organization that they work with. I had mentioned that the state of Pennsylvania is reviewing its state science standards, and with an eye towards the next generation science standards. So briefly here, the next generation science standards tend to emphasize, 3 different dimensions of science education and science teaching: the disciplinary core ideas, the content of science; scientific and engineering practices, the doing of science; and cross-cutting concepts. How do students learn to think about science, regardless of what the discipline might be, and also regardless of what grade level they're in, because it should build year to year to year. There's a heavy emphasis with the next generation science standards on using phenomenon or an observable event as the catalyst for students' inquiry and students to study concepts within science. So we do anticipate that these will be reflected to one degree or another in what Pennsylvania is moving towards. As part of the work of the vertical team, particularly a lot of the work that was done last year, the team looked at recommendations from, as we said, professional organizations and others, and other best practices to identify what would we say is the purpose for science education in Radnor Township School District. What is the department striving to achieve, as well as what are teaching and learning principles that can help guide decisions at the district level, at the department level, but also at the individual teaching level when it comes to thinking about how are we instructing science and how are we helping our students to develop their understanding and their ability to apply that understanding of science. So these are principles that should help to guide our practice, that are hopefully specific enough to be clear or give us some sense of what direction they're asking of us, but also not so prescriptive that they get in the way of of innovation or in the way of the professional practices that are happening in each of our levels. So with all that into consideration, we did come up with obviously a number of areas of strength for our program. The K-12 opportunities for students to participate in hands-on science activities and lab experiments, and to the extent possible, even during COVID-19, is something that our teachers and our team is very proud of. The students are interested in pursuing science education and taking higher level science courses. Our teachers are continually becoming more comfortable and practicing differentiated instruction to ensure that all students can have meaningful experiences in their science courses. Our students are successful in our science courses, including our most rigorous courses, Advanced Placement, and the Project Lead the Way course that we have at the high school. And there are a variety of different opportunities for science learning outside of the classroom, and you see several examples of that listed on the screen. And of course, there are also areas for improvement. The next generation science standards first came out in 2013, and our teachers, have some familiarity with them, but we do see that this is an area for more professional development and growth. We see a need to continually revise our curriculum and develop our performance assessments in science based on the changing academic standards and based on what we see as the needs of our students. We want to make sure that the written curriculum and the taught curriculum are in sync with each other. So there are some areas where we felt like the documents could be updated there. And we want to make sure that there is alignment between what we're teaching in our courses and what students are being assessed on the PSSA and Keystone exams. Not that that's the whole story by any means, but it is something for us to pay attention to. Now, the high school also expressed interest in at least exploring the possibility of possibly adding a science elective at the high school. We're no longer running Physics 2A and Chemistry 2A after this year because there have been historically low enrollment in those courses over the past several years. So there might be an opportunity to look for perhaps another course to put in there to see what else might appeal to our students. And we do see the need to look at materials and textbooks to support our program. We anticipate reviewing sometime in the next several years K-5 science materials for possible adoption. The middle school uses the Amplify Science program, which we have licenses for through next school year, but they've expressed interest in piloting another program. Most likely it would be with one teacher per grade level next school year, and evaluating another program and comparing it with Amplify Science to decide 2 years from now, which program do we feel would meet our students' needs the best. And we also would like to update our high school textbooks in a number of areas. So, we're still working through that process, but it's quite likely that in June, we will bring for you books in the areas of biology honors, AP bio, chemistry honors and advanced, and possibly physics academic for adoption. In most of those cases, the online access to those resources where it exists is expiring at the end of this year, so it won't be available. Those won't be available to our teachers and our students going forward. In 2022-2023, we are tentatively looking at advanced bio and AP environmental science, and tentatively for 2024, looking at anatomy and physiology. So based on the status of our current materials, that's where we see the need going forward. And we did talk with the operations department about providing an overview to specifically our middle school and our high school science teachers about what is the maintenance and the safety checks that they complete regarding science equipment in classrooms, so our teachers are familiar with what happens in many cases behind the scenes and over the summer. As you'd heard about previously, the initiatives that are going on in other areas certainly are related to what's happening in science. Like all of our teachers, our science teachers have been developing their skills with instructional technology and increasing students' use of technology. With the 339 plan, our science education is aligned with college and career readiness. And we've previously mentioned the interest that many of our students have in science-related fields, and the interest that the economy has in having students who are well equipped to be employed and function successfully within science-related fields. And certainly diversity, equity, inclusion. We want to continue promoting diversity, equity, inclusion in our science classes through both, through the content of the course, how we're teaching those courses, the materials that we're choosing and who's represented, but also who's also enrolled in our highest level science classes. So where diversity, equity, and inclusion is certainly something that is getting our attention in many areas, science education is among them. So that was a rapid overview of the audit, but I think you get a sense of the program and what it is that we're proud of and some of those areas where we want to continue to grow. Ted or I are happy to take any questions you might have.
I don't expect anyone to know the answer to this off the top of your head, but just I'm curious as a follow-up, if you have the results from the AP tests for the various areas of science, that we were provided with that for the foreign language. And I know nobody's going to remember last year's test results, but if at some point we could, sort of just get an update, because I know that they're really great, but I'd just like to see it in writing. That would be great.
Yeah, and if somebody's interested in not necessarily waiting for us to pull those up, we can certainly get those for you. In the data presentation and the report that's presented each year to the curriculum committee and then the board, you will have the AP scores broken down by specific test. So I think 18-19 might be the most current one that's up there, but each year those are updated with the other data that's shared as part of that report.
Now, did they administer the AP test last spring?
They did. It was done remotely.
Okay.
But they did administer AP tests.
Committee members, does anybody have anything that they'd like to highlight? Ms. Goldman, go ahead.
Just a couple quick questions. At Radnor High School, thank you, by the way, Dr. Kearney. You did a great job of covering a lot of stuff in an efficient way. And I just wanted to also say that I appreciate that in both audits, you made the connections with other RTSD initiatives. I really like the fact that you're thinking of that way in terms of the audits. So thank you for that. Can somebody just remind me, wasn't there a change to the ninth grade coursework in science at Radnor High School a few years ago? And I'm just curious how that's working out. And did we switch back or is it still the same?
So last year, we moved CP biology to the 11th grade in order for them to be better prepared for the keystones. And so we introduced CP environmental science before that course to give them some of the basic skills needed for the keystone and for biology. Now, in terms of the test results, I can't speak to that. I don't know if PT or Dan can say how effective that has been. If you can comment on that, I don't know.
I can jump in. I just wanted to make a quick correction, Doc. I think you said 11th grade.
Oh my God. Yeah, 10th grade.
No, that's okay. Bio-CP got moved to 10th grade. And freshmen take science and the environment in 9th grade now. And that was put as a buffer to give them that extra level, or that extra year rather, of building up their reading skills, right, and their comprehension skills, knowing that, such a large piece of biology is the vocab and the really dense reading, and making sure that, they had that gain. And it has really significantly helped in terms of, scores within the class. We saw good keystone scores, certainly, and I think we had looked at those at the data presentation. They were not as high as in years past, but I think that was to be expected given the fact that they took them in the fall after a full year, or after a pandemic and after a full summer. So I think to try and make that connection right now is a little difficult to do. I think we're going to have to look a couple of years out, but I am confident that it was the right thing to do.
Great, thanks. And my last question is, in February, we were presented with this interesting proposal to make a foundational STEM coursework at the elementary level. And is there any connection between the science audit and the opportunity to do that STEM work at the elementary level?
So we definitely saw a strong connection between the proposed STEM work at the elementary level and the tech ed audit, but there's certainly opportunities to show that integration, because I think the intention of the STEM work at the elementary level is to help infuse STEM, not just as part of that rotation, but to help support core content instruction as well, including integration with science. So we do see that would hopefully continue and pay dividends as the students went up into the secondary level as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah,
Could I jump in for a second?
Mr. Dukowitz is very much involved with that, so he may have something else to add as well. And then PT certainly can jump in if it's up to me.
No, Dr. Kearney, I think you spelled it out pretty clearly, but I'm certainly here to answer questions as well. So I'll turn it over to PT.
I was just going to say that, our STEM night that we usually have in the spring at the middle school brings, so many kids in at the elementary level. And that is, I've always taken part in that the past few years. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, we didn't do it this past year, but it has always been such a wonderful event to see the kids. And, I know with our kids from the Annenberg Science Club and different clubs at the high school, we've always had activities down there. They've dissected a brain looking for a tumor and, really fun stuff to get them engaged. I think it would be awesome if we could pair with the elementary schools and make that happen. If Mr. Dukevich is open to that, I think it would be a really unique experience for the kids, and our high school kids love to, be with the little ones. And I think it would be great.
I think Mr. Dukevich sounded very open to it. If I remember the February curriculum committee meeting correctly, it was pretty exciting, and I'm remembering it 2 months later. That's why I'm asking if there's sort of a merging of, the science audit and this opportunity, maybe to reinforce that.
Yeah, I was only going to add, I think the audit substantiated the idea and the endeavor, and it showed that sometimes our middle school program, while it's great in its own, we're not sending students to the middle level yet with a common experience to be prepared. And so by adding integration at the elementary level, we can pair with the high school and do some really unique experiences. I think the bigger picture is providing all kids with a common experience, and as Jim said, integrating amongst the 4 disciplines and beyond on a regular approach, not just on special occasions. So that's kind of the big picture, hopefully the next steps we can take.
Okay, Dr. Bobson, Ms. Dunn, you have comments about science or?
No, I was around, I had a middle school student who was there for the implementation of Amplify Science, and it went poorly. So I'm glad to hear that as we look at potentially switching to a new program, we're looking to pilot it. And I hope that in doing so, we will work out the kinks and make sure that if there are technology glitches, that we will, address all those in advance and not take vendors at their word that things will just work. I know that was a real challenge last time, and I'm sure people have learned from that experience. At least the science teachers at the middle school, I'm sure, remember that vividly. So if we end up sticking with that program, that's fine. But I assume we're looking because we know there have been some challenges.
That was certainly part of the thinking of the middle school vertical team members who when we talked about this idea, they wanted to get a clear and as thorough possible look at whatever programs they're considering, in part based on their experience with Amplify.
I think Sebastian had a comment possibly about Amplify Science.
Oh, well, yeah, Amplify was fun. But
He looks like he froze.
she had a question. Am I back now?
You're half back.
It's frozen.
Maybe
I'm
turn
half
off
back.
your camera, Sebastian. You'll get better audio.
Can you hear me clearly now?
We can.
Okay. Well, I actually had a question, and it was we don't currently offer a physics like honors level course. And I was wondering is that like a nationwide thing, or is that something specific to Radnor?
Do you want me to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Come back on. Let's see your face now for the answer.
So about 5 or 6 years ago, we did offer honors physics. And then after that, there was an AP Physics B. And so those two courses went together in sequence. And so in AP Physics B, they had a number of different topics in addition to the honors physics, and expanded on some of the topics from honors physics. And then AP put out, is about 6 years ago, put out AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2, which really replaced honors physics and AP Physics B. And so AP Physics 1 is primarily mechanics, and AP Physics 2 is primarily optics, magnetism, thermal physics, fluid dynamics. And so they really split the two courses up into two distinct courses, where we had honors physics and AP Physics B. Now it's AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 for the sequence.
Yeah, I think the reason I kind of mentioned that is I think that there are very many juniors who would have liked to have that level in between AP and advanced, where they're kind of caught in between, and either they pick to go to AP and they struggle, or they're cruising through advanced. So I was just wondering why that was, or if it was something specific or more general.
Yeah, that was the history behind it.
Now, so AP Physics 1 is a separate test from AP Physics 2, like you can get credit for both of them?
Yes, so you have a separate test, whereas in the past, AP Physics B was just a single test. Yeah, so it turns out that in physics, you can take 4 different AP tests. A lot of different tests you can take in physics, yeah.
But you can get credit for all of those if you score high enough.
Yeah, depending on the school and the score, yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't have time tonight to go through some physics problems with you, but maybe at a future meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but just to follow.
The curriculum committee in the past was given a science test one time, and it was quite sad how we performed. So
Did you want one? Is that what you're asking for?
no.
Can I just, Lydia, can I follow on Sebastian's question? Because it's worth understanding. Was the decision just made in terms of teaching resources and student enrollment that we didn't have the either space in our curriculum or time in the day or space in a building to offer the 3 different levels of physics? And that's why we went with just the advanced placement or the AP.
Oh, gosh.
The advanced or the AP.
So
I think that was what Sebastian was asking.
You want to talk about that, Dan?
I'm happy to jump in because I was that was back in the day, either when I was first starting as principal or when I was in charge of academics as the AP. So when we looked at the scope and sequence, we essentially have physics college prep, physics advanced, AP Physics 1, which covered a lot of the material that was previously honors physics before they split the AP Physics B. And then we've got AP Physics 2, and then we've got AP Physics C, and there's 2 exams for the AP Physics C course that you can cover. And Doc, correct me if I'm wrong, you have an electricity and magnetism piece and also a mechanics piece to that. So we do offer numerous different levels. And when we looked at what the AP had done by splitting the exam, the thought of adding another level that would have that would cover a lot of the same material as something else didn't make a lot of sense to us as a group.
Okay, thank you. I think Dr. Mulman said it. I just heard it a different way. So I just wanted to make sure I understood it. It's not repeating the work. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Babson?
Sure. So one question that I had was, is there some way that we track or could track the, I would guess, positive effect that the integrated programs have on developing scientific understanding? Because the reason I ask that is, for just let me draw upon my own personal experience as someone with a pretty heavy liberal arts background, going into training to think like a scientist, to do scientific research, was really helped by finding connections between science and the liberal arts. So the history of science, the cultural background of science, et cetera. And so I think the integrated programs, from my perspective, seem like really strong offerings that we have as a district. And I'd just be curious to know if there's any way that we could, or if we have tracked any kind of positive effect on developing scientific understanding from those programs, from participation in them.
I don't think we've tracked it specifically. Thinking about how we might do it, we could, it might be possible to take a look at how those students perform going forward. Now, when you talk about scientific understanding, I guess we'd have to think about what we would use to assess that. We do have PSSA in 8th grade, and we do have the science-based essay and the Keystone in bio. So to the degree that you think that's assessing understanding, we might be able to take a look at how those students specifically perform on those assessments. But a better way, or another way, might be to see if we were able to see how those students performed on our common assessments that we think might be a little bit more authentic in some ways. But I don't know, I don't think that work has specifically been done unless someone else here is familiar with it.
Thanks, Dr. Kearney. And again, I mean, this is kind of a big picture question or topic, but I think it's kind of a flip side to what Ms. Goldman was saying earlier, that for some kids, the process of understanding scientific, let's say, facts or thinking scientifically might not come naturally, and just might not be part of their comfort zone. So Ms. Goldman was talking about foreign languages or world languages. So my understanding of integrated programs is that they give some kind of opportunity to students to kind of look at different phenomena from different angles. So it's just a general idea, general thought. Jim, I think you're right that to operationalize a variable of what scientific understanding is difficult, but just putting it out there. Thanks.
Right. And thank you for the science audit. I think it's also one of our strongest. Let's just say we have an incredible offering in our high school. If you look at our course of studies and you see what we offer in science, I mean, it's really impressive. So thank you for, just sharing that with us. And it just, I don't know if I can speak for my other board members, but it makes me so proud that we are, preparing our students so well for higher education. And I know I can speak to that from firsthand knowledge that we do. And so that brings us to the 4.4 item, the curriculum review cycle. Is there something more that Mr. Kearney, Dr. Kearney, you were going to highlight?
We're going to go ahead, and I believe that we are over by about 15 minutes. And so we're going to go ahead and move that to our next meeting. And Dr. Kearney, we'll ask him to come back and to give us an overview of that time.
All right. And that brings us to
Facilities Committee. Thanks to you, Mr. Bechtold.
That brings us to new business. Any new business? And then our last round of public comment.
All right, so we have one item that we're going to read tonight. This is from Bruce Tweet, 21 Old Oaks Road in Rosemont. I am extremely concerned about reports that the chairs of the rebranding committee, Michael Petiti and Dan Bechtold, are unilaterally changing committee procedures and removing nicknames from consideration without involving the committee. If Petiti and Bechtold were ordered to do this, who gave that order? If they were not ordered to do this, how will they be disciplined? Why are you, the board, continuing to waste time and resources on this rebranding when the overwhelming preference of the community is to keep the name Raiders? Our schools are not a personal plaything for you and your ideological whims. You can end this silliness right now by voting to keep the name Raiders. Do the right thing. And that's it.
Thank you. No, is there any other public comment, Ms. Gangle?
No, ma'am.
All right, that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. And we look forward to picking up these excellent topics in May.